Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us once again on the State of Freedom.
The State of Freedom is a listener-supported podcast. We're committed to pursuing the truth about policymaking, decisions, and situations in Louisiana and at the national level that stand to impact our freedoms.
Please become a monthly supporter of the State of Freedom at freedomstate.us as we continue to expand the voice of liberty across Louisiana and beyond.
Blanco Brothers has been in business in Louisiana for about 30 years now. I have personal experience with this company, and I know others who have as well. If you have a business or a home and you've got roofing, gutter, sheet metal issues at all, one number you need to know, and that's Blanco Brothers Construction. He will treat you right financially, and he will take very good care of you with regard to the quality of the service that he provides. I cannot recommend Blanco Brothers Construction more highly enough. Memorize the number 225-226-4222. Let him work with your insurance company and let him treat you right if you have a problem. There's no more important commodity on your home than your roof. And, when there's a problem with it, you need to be able to trust both financially and with respect to the workmanship who is doing your work. Blanco Brothers Construction, the very best in the business.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the State of Freedom, where we are grounded in faith and the Constitution. We're committed to giving voice to the truth, living with courage, and taking action. It is Thursday, January 22nd. It's 10 a.m. Central. I'm Danielle Walker, and I'm joined by my friend and co-host, the watchdog in chief of Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, Chris Alexander. Good morning, Chris. How are you?
Good morning. All about you, baby.
We are coming to you live on Voice of the People USA TV and radio network on Rumble, X, YouTube, and Facebook. As always, you can catch us later on our audio-only podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple Podcasts a couple hours after the show. Well, thank you to everyone who tuned in last night for the launch of our Warrior Wednesday feature, featuring special guest JJ Carroll. I know we had a lot of tech issues, and they were probably my fault. So please accept my most sincere apology. We are working to find better tech solutions that will be easier for all of us. So pray for us and stay tuned. If you weren't able to catch that, it will be available on all platforms later today. And going forward, we will keep Warrior Wednesday on all platforms, but we will only take questions from Warrior Circle subscribers. So if you haven't joined us yet, please do, because we can't do this without your support. So without further ado, let me introduce our guest this morning, Will Chamberlain. Let me bring you forward, Will. Will is the senior counsel of the Article 3 Project, the organization run by Mike Davis that's fearlessly and ruthlessly protecting the rule of law in our country. And we are so grateful for y'all and all that you do. I know you pack one heck of a punch, and we are so happy to have you back with us, Will. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you guys.
Awesome. Well, let me read the scripture of the day, and then we'll get into all the juicy stuff that's happening. We've got rogue judges, we've got Clintons, we've got fraud, there's so much to cover. The scripture today is Psalm chapter 82. It's a short one. It says, the title of it is called True Justice, and it says, "All rise, for God now comes to judge as he convenes heaven's courtroom. He judges every judge and rules over every ruler, saying, 'How long will you judges refuse to listen to the voice of true justice and continue to corrupt what is right by judging in favor of the wrong? Defend the defenseless, the fatherless, and the forgotten, the disenfranchised and the destitute. Your duty is to deliver the poor and the powerless, liberate them from the grasp of the wicked. But you continue in your darkness and ignorance while the foundations of society are shaken to the core. Didn't I commission you as judges, saying you are all like gods, lowercase g, since you judge on my behalf? You are all like the sons of the Most High, my representatives. Nevertheless, in death you are nothing but mere men. You will be laid in the ground like any prince, and you will die. All rise, for God now takes his place as judge of all the earth. Don't you know that everything and everyone belongs to him? The nations will be sifted in his hands." And I was reading that this morning and I just thought, wow, God was not impressed with the judges of the time of the psalmist, and he's not impressed with the very many of the judges in our day today. Y'all don't need me to tell you that we're in the midst of a lot of corrupt judges that are compromised in defending the indefensible at the expense of the innocent, the defenseless, and the disenfranchised. But I believe we're about to see many rogue judges publicly sifted by the Lord at the hands of those who truly love justice and hate evil, corruption, and injustice. So let's pray for the wisdom of timing and approach for those who are in positions to actually remove these wicked and corrupt judges in our nation, and may it happen swiftly.
May it happen very swiftly, Danielle. And all we need to accomplish exactly what you're saying, and I know Will Chamberlain will agree with this, is an equal application of the Constitution, equal application of the rule of law. Unfortunately, we have, a two-tiered system of justice now in the United States, sadly, where a certain segment of our society believes that they can violate the Constitution and violate the law with impunity. Um, Will, welcome to our show. I want to start right off with Don Lemon. I know you've been very vocal about this, the invasion of the Baptist Church in Minnesota in violation of federal law, in violation of the First Amendment. Hot off the line, supposedly right now, is that some arrests are beginning in that. Tell us about that. Talk about the egregious violation of the Constitution that entailed, and will Don Lemon himself be arrested?
So 3 questions there. So what happened with the arrests? What is the legal problem here? Why are these people being arrested? And then will Don Lemon himself be arrested? So let's start with the first question. So there have been 2 arrests so far this morning. There was an arrest of Nakima Levy-Armstrong and I believe a woman named Chantil Allen. Nakima Levy-Armstrong was the person who organized this church invasion. Chantil Allen was all involved in the organizing of the invasion. She's also a member of the school board in St. Paul. Imagine that. They were both arrested this morning. Pam Bondi announced their arrests on X. It's never a good sign if you were involved in a criminal activity and we're announcing the arrests like it's the breaking news of the day. So guys, so that could, I'll answer your third question right now. Don Lemon's getting arrested too. Everybody's getting arrested. Yeah. That's my view. Everybody. Now, exactly what each of them gets charged with is going to be kind of dependent on their conduct as revealed by that videotape, but they're all getting arrested, I think at a minimum for a violation of the FACE Act. The most interesting news is the FACE Act is the law that prohibits obstructing clinic entrances, abortion clinic entrances, and it also prohibits obstructing entrance to churches. But Nakima Levy-Armstrong isn't just being charged under that, where the first, unless there was violence, it's a misdemeanor. She's being charged under 18 U.S.C. 241 for conspiracy against rights, which is part of the Ku Klux Klan Act. That is if she's convicted of that, that's a felony charge. That's why. So she's brought in and she's being charged with a felony. I think that many of these people are going to get charged with conspiracy against rights. And in fact, it's actually, even though it's a more severe charge, actually having read the statute, I think it's actually a stronger charge given the facts of the case. I mean, if you read the FACE Act statute carefully, you'll note it, and you read about some of the cases where the language of physical obstruction has been interpreted. It's almost always about blocking ingress and egress to whatever building it is you're talking about. And if I looked at what happened on that video, they were obstructing the church service by shouting it down, but they weren't blocking the entrance. People could enter and leave. Whereas conspiracy against rights says if you just make an agreement to suppress somebody's constitutional rights, that's a felony. And it seems all these people did that when they made an agreement to shut down a church service. So I think that's actually the simpler charge.
Well, Don Lemon was sitting about a foot from the pastor, I believe I saw on a brief video, and the pastor told him multiple times, I need to go. I've got to deal with my congregation. I have things that I need to do. And Don Lemon continued to agitate him. And it seems to me that there's no question that he should be arrested. And I'm happy to hear you say that everybody who was inside that building is going to be arrested. And you're confident.
That's my prediction. That's my prediction. I think that every single person, I don't understand what the distinction would be in terms of their charges to completely exonerate any of them. They all knew what they were doing. They all knew they were invading a church to stop the service. They all chanted to stop the service. The fact that they've arrested the ringleader of the whole plan first is not surprising, but it doesn't mean that she uniquely committed. She might have committed a unique crime in terms of being an organizer. Maybe there's something different in her indictment that won't be in the others, possibly. But all of them have committed crimes. All of them are going to get arrested. I think that the people need to, everybody was, I think, a little bit too, I saw some people complaining a lot about, well, why haven't the arrests happened yet? And I actually, on a podcast on Monday, I predicted that the first arrests would happen within 72 to 96 hours of the event. And the reason, and that's exactly what happened. It happened at 92,
Wow.
almost exactly.
And what's
and the
really
reason
interesting.
go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I guess I was just going to say the reason I was able to make that prediction is because, basically the DOJ was put on high alert the same way it was when J6 happened. And the first indictments in the J6 case happened about 36 to 48 hours after the event. And that's DOJ going at full blast, like absolute maximum urgency. And in that case, I think January 6th happened on a weekday, whereas this event happened on the Sunday before a federal holiday on Monday. So you just needed to add on 48 hours to your estimate, and you'd probably get, if they, once you tack on the 48 hours of like, well, it's nobody's working, it's Sunday night.
Yeah.
I mean, I was getting calls because I was talking about this on Sunday. I was getting calls from DOJ civil rights attorneys on Sunday night. That shows you how urgently they took it. They immediately, everybody who was enjoying their holiday, their day of rest on Sunday night was immediately back at it, knowing they had a federal holiday on Monday. It didn't matter. Like, they were going. So
Wow. Yeah. Well, I was just going to add that Don Lemon was videoed. He probably videoed himself interrogating the pastor and saying that the protesters were there with their constitutionally protected right to protest. And I wonder if there's an additional charge, or that could at least be brought as evidence against him, because I don't think you can assert your constitutional right over in such a way that it impedes someone else's constitutional right. Is that a fair thing to say?
It's not an additional charge, right? Because they merely trying to articulate what you think the law is can never be a crime, right? It's
Okay.
just, okay. Like, but you're wrong. That's the key thing. He's wrong about that point. And this has been tested before, like time, place, and manner restrictions are perfectly justified. And I can think of no more obvious time, place, and manner restriction than you aren't allowed to shout down and shut down a worship service. Just seems really obvious.
Will, do you think that Don Lemon genuinely believed that he was acting consistent with the law? Do you believe that he thought he was acting in a constitutional
yes, I do.
way?
That's the thing. That's how I know, because he just showed up there and filmed himself committing a federal crime.
Well, he's even more of an idiot. He's even more of an idiot than I thought he was.
All these people are idiots. The woman who just got arrested, Nikema Armstrong, is a civil rights attorney. Like, are you not familiar with the civil rights statutes? Like,
wow.
It's extraordinary. It really sort of indirectly goes to the dumbing down of the law schools.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So this is a very interesting problem. People have I've had this discussion over the last few days with a number of people who are like, they were blackpilled about this because they were saying, oh man, there's been so few indictments on the Antifa front. And so they're just like, oh, these indictments are screwed. I'm like, this is a completely different category, because you have to understand this about Antifa. There's more sophistication there. They understand that they're breaking the law. So when they show up, they all show up in the same outfit. They show up masked, so you can't identify their face. They don't bring their phones. They don't post where they are. They don't post who's going to the event. Unlike literally Nikema Armstrong posted on Facebook, we just did this crime. Here's a list of people who did it with me. Like, here's video of us at the church doing the crime thing. Like, that Antifa doesn't do that. You'll notice. And so Bill Barr actually wrote about this in his book, and he pointed out that this makes it really hard to get the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that any individual in Antifa was responsible for any particular crime. It's a real challenge. It's not that it can't be done, but it's a lot harder, and sometimes they just get away with it because you just can't identify who was responsible for the criminal act. So that's not the case here. This is the left-wing equivalent of the January 6th riot. because in the January 6th riot, and it was similar to January 6th, I bet many of the people did not realize they were committing a crime when they trespassed into the Capitol under those circumstances.
Being let in with the door being held open for them by the Capitol Police.
Right. They didn't realize it. And so as a result, they were unmasked. They were posting on Facebook with their location, and there's just tons of video. It'd be like, there you are in a place you're not supposed to be. That's a crime. And so this is the analog to that. And so just like they were able to, churn through prosecutions in the January 6th case and just endlessly do it, that's what's going to happen here. I think my original prediction was, you're going to see every individual prosecution takes a certain amount of prosecutorial work to get these guys brought up. You need lawyers to look at it. You need affidavits from cops. You need to go to a judge. You need to get a warrant, blah, blah, blah. But the first arrest happened within 72 to 96 hours. I expect over the next 4 to 6 months, you will see all the arrests done. Maybe even faster than that if they're really churning through it. But that's sort of, there were new arrests being made in new indictments in the J6 cases 2 to 3 years after the event. So I think with 40 people, it'll take some time, but the wheels of justice turn slowly. But in this case, they're going to turn, and they've already started turning, and it's just a matter of now convictions is another matter. Who knows if Minnesota juries are going to try and nullify? Who knows? There's a lot left to there's a lot of uncertainty still, but the wheels of justice are turning.
Well, you mentioned Minnesota juries trying to nullify. Will, if these cases get to a trial, the obviously nullification is a jury basically saying that we don't believe that this law is justified. We don't believe that the law is correct. We're not going to enforce it. We're not going to convict. Lawyers are not allowed to specifically talk to the jury about nullification. And the judge doesn't ever instruct a jury on nullification. So how would a jury get to that?
Well, a jury would just do it, just decide that. Ultimately, they get to make the decision about whether to convict or acquit. They're not obligated. They are supposed to follow the instructions of the judge, but if they don't have to explain themselves.
Yeah,
there's no.
That's true.
They don't. So it's just a matter of them just making a decision internally to do it, and then not talk about why they did it. And that's the end of that, right? They don't. When you have a verdict, you can get interviews of the jurors later, but they don't have to explain themselves. They just they provide the verdict, and that's it.
So the leaders of this the leaders of this you believe were the Antifa leader, whatever's responsible for this. So she knew that she was acting in violation of the law. She flouted it.
Oh, I think she didn't. I think she didn't.
Oh, she did not know.
I think all these people, because they didn't conduct themselves in a manner to conceal their behavior or their identity, which means they did, in my view, unless they're just dumb and wanted to be prosecuted, they didn't realize they were committing crimes. They thought that this was First Amendment protected activity. They were wrong. And this woman should have known because she went to law school. So she should have known. She's a literal civil rights lawyer. So real, not impressive. But that's my analysis of this is no, she did not know she was committing a crime. That's why she publicly posted about her crime on Facebook.
Yeah.
That's so
do you know whether or not Don Lemon has said anything about this in light of the very recent arrests? Has he made any comments?
I haven't seen a news statement, but boy, has Don Lemon been very silly. If I were Don Lemon's lawyer and I had seen this happen, I would have told him, "You're not talking to the public about any of this. You're not making any more admissions. We're not making, because in Don Lemon's case, the entire point of your defense is going to be along the lines of you're going to want to defend his activity as journalistic and kind of not talk about what he may have or may not have known. That said, the existing video demonstrates he knew exactly what he was doing. He was that he saw themselves as, we are going to invade a church. He knew exactly what the plan was. But if you were his lawyer, you'd be like, please don't talk. Please stop talking. All you can do here is make admissions that hurt you in court. Nothing you say will help you at this point.
And now he's got a massive beef going with Nicki Minaj. That is not hiding in the shadows.
Well, he's about to have a beef with the Minnesota U.S. Attorney's Office. That's what he's
exactly. I just hope that the U.S. Attorney in Minnesota is not Somali.
No, he's not. He's a good Daniel Rosen, good dude.
Good guy, awesome.
Yeah, so he's a good guy. Pam Bondi likes him a lot. They had an interesting problem in Minnesota where, because they were going to go after, this connects to the other problem, they were going to go after Renee Good's partner, for obstruction of federal law enforcement, that they were going to pursue charges against her. You had this sort of open rebellion from 6 members of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Minnesota, and Pam Bondi fired them all, which is the exact right move, because Renee Good's partner did commit something like 3 to 4 federal crimes in the course of 40 seconds leading up to Renee Good's shooting, and should be held accountable for those crimes, because apparently the public is under the impression that the ICE officer may have committed a crime when he didn't, and the only federal crimes committed there were committed by Renee and Becca Good.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Well, I hope, Will, that you're right about this. Certainly believe that you're right about it, because, a swift, stern prosecution of these people is essential, not only for purposes of individual justice for the people who are members of this church, but to set an example that this kind of behavior is simply not going to be tolerated. If people can invade a church and obstruct other people's core rights of religious worship and free expression, then we simply don't have a republic. And I think that's why it's so important to take this very, very seriously.
I totally agree. From the moment this happened, it's completely utterly antisocial and appalling conduct. It's unlawful, and you shouldn't be able to do it, and you aren't able to do it. It's just illegal, and it's a serious federal crime. And so all these people are going to have to answer to the law, and for their conduct. And I mean, they're under the impression that this is allowed, and they were wrong. It's not actually. If you wanted, there was a perfectly lawful way for them to do this. If they wanted to stand outside the church on the sidewalk and chant, okay, by all means, it's a free country. You can stand outside. You can't shut down the service. You can't walk in and prevent people from, exercising their freedom of religion.
Yeah, totally agree.
What
about
on the subject? Sorry, Chris.
Daniel.
On the subject of facing the law, Hillary and Bill Clinton this week refused to comply with congressional subpoenas issued by the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. And the committee, I believe, under the direction of Chairman Comer, voted to advance resolutions that the House vote to hold them in contempt of Congress. And I think if it's approved, it could be referred to DOJ for potential criminal prosecution. We know, of course, that Peter Navarro and Steve Bannon both served time because they were prosecuted for this very thing, even though I believe they both cited executive privilege. Your memory on this may be better than mine, but in my view, there's no executive privilege for the Clintons with respect to their involvement with Jeffrey Epstein. No, there's not. They could have, if they wanted to avoid this problem, they could have showed up and pled the Fifth, and that would have been a perfectly reasonable thing to do. Even if they, I'm more open to these sort of pleading the Fifth arguments. Like, I have lots of good friends who pled the Fifth in the face of the January 6th prosecutions, because the way that the prosecutors were talking about January 6th, you had no, basic speech was a crime, right? Yeah. Like, if you were involved in organizing the rally the day before, maybe they'd charge you with incitement or something. So you don't know what's a crime in relation to what they're doing. The First Amendment doesn't seem to, is not constraining their prosecutorial decisions. So it's perfectly reasonable that if you were brought in and you had anything to do at all with any of the protests, like, you didn't, not even if you didn't go in, if you were just showed up at a rally the night before, like, claim that you should plead the Fifth. That's the right thing to do from a lawyer's perspective. But you're not allowed to just defy a subpoena. And that's exactly what Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro went to jail for, and if the Democrats wanted to, retain the norms and respect, they wouldn't have prosecuted those people, but they did for the first time in 40 years. So guess what? I think Bill and Hillary Clinton are in real trouble. I think they're thinking to themselves, oh, a DC jury will never convict. It's not going to get to a jury. It's going to be a misdemeanor charge. So misdemeanors don't have to be tried by jury. They'll charge them with the low level misdemeanor and send them off to jail for 3 to 6 months. Yeah.
And with 9 Democrats joining on the committee, I think it certainly bodes well for a favorable vote in the full House.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. And so you get, as opposed to an actual physical appearance, my understanding is the Clintons provided a letter, which cited a litany of abuses by the Trump administration, as though that has anything to do with the Epstein investigation and the clear evidence.
By Congress. Congress isn't the Trump administration.
Right.
Like, this is a contempt of Congress charge. You're mad at somebody else. This isn't us. We're the one. We have the right to ask you questions. It's literally our job.
Yes.
we get to investigate things if we think laws need to change. If we say you need to show up, you need to show up and tell us, and you need to answer our questions. And then you need to assert whatever privilege it is you want to assert when we ask you the questions. That's the way it works. And
Yeah.
Why
do you think it is, Will, that they didn't appear? Why do you think it is that they didn't?
I think they were scared. I think they didn't want. I think they knew they needed to plead the fifth about this stuff because they didn't want to have to answer the questions about their conduct with Epstein. And I think that's, okay, plead the fifth, right? Like, you don't know exactly what legal exposure you have from your, association with this guy. I think it's, if they had pled the fifth, I would say, there'd be a terrible news cycle about it, but that would be what I would expect. But it's like they thought, I don't want this news cycle about me pleading the fifth because I believe my conduct might incriminate me. Like, that would be a really bad news cycle for me. It'd be really embarrassing. So they were like, I'm just going to defy the subpoena outright. Not an option. And, this is like Jeff Clark did this. Jeff Clark, and he's a smart guy. Like, Jeff Clark tried very hard to assert executive privilege, and basically Congress shut it down. We're like, no, you just can't. We're not going to accept that. And so at the end, he finally said, fine, Fifth Amendment. I'm not testifying. Like, I can't testify about this stuff. I believe it's privileged. And also, you're trying to, they actually did. Like, you remember, he was indicted in both Arizona and Georgia. So, like, I can't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
What's the time frame in your view, if for to move this ball down the road? Like, how soon could we potentially see them in prison?
I mean, I think DOJ is going to wait for a referral. Once they get a referral, they'll investigate the matter. But that strikes me as the kind of indictment that can be slapped together in a week, easy. Because it's like the facts are so straightforward. The facts are we issued you a lawful subpoena repeatedly. You didn't show up. You sent a letter explaining your intent to intentionally defy the subpoena. That's unlawful under the Contempt of Congress statute. You are indicted. That's like a 2-page indictment.
Yeah. What about the broader Epstein investigation? Will, you expecting any arrests more broadly about people involved in this?
No. And
Why?
That's not because I'm sort of like anti-Pam Bondi. I just don't think there's anything there in terms of people to arrest. And the reason I say that is because this is not new, the problem of Epstein, right? This is the conduct at issue is conduct that mostly occurred in the late 2000s. So we're talking 15 years old at least at this point. During the mid-2010s, the plaintiffs involved all had very, very, very good plaintiffs' lawyers. David Boies, I don't know if you're familiar with him. He was the guy who sued Microsoft. He's one of the biggest plaintiffs' attorneys in the world. And he's just one of many attorneys who represented the Epstein plaintiffs. And so you had a decade of litigation over this stuff, enormous amounts of discovery, depositions. If there was really good evidence that there was just this more criminality that could be indicted by third parties outside of Epstein and Maxwell, it would have probably been uncovered at this point because there would have been a huge amount of money to be made by these plaintiffs. And they could, if they were able to identify, also remember the plaintiffs are the people who are the nominal victims who know who the people who victimize them are. If they could just say, they would be there. And so even, this is something that didn't really get a lot of attention. Michael Tracy's been really good on this, but it's something I noticed when you had Thomas Massey, posturing with regard to getting his bill passed. One of the things he said is well, if they don't pass this bill, then I'm going to put forward the Epstein list. And it sort of begs the question, like, whoa. What Epstein? Do you know who these people are? Say something, right? Like, there are like pedophiles in your midst and you know who they are and you're not going to say anything? Like, and you're instead demanding that DOJ sort of do some stuff to try and find the information that you already know about that would protect people? What? Sorry? Like, there's a lack of, it's kind of to me that just revealed the BS of it all. Like when because the woman said we're going to put out our own Epstein list. Well, why haven't you done it? Where is it? Where are you know the information you're saying, right? You're the victims. The people who victimized you are mostly alive. You're alive. You're here. Like, this isn't some cold case murder where we're trying to figure out who it might be. Like, no. You were there. You were victimized, supposedly. You have a list of people who did it, supposedly, and yet you won't reveal that list. But you want DOJ to somehow find it from their evidence, even though you have the best evidence possible, which is you're the person who was there and the eyewitness. I think this got wildly overblown. I think not in terms of like the substance of what Epstein did, which is obviously horrible, but I just don't think there's any really good evidence that third parties were involved in Epstein's perversions outside of Epstein and Maxwell themselves. I doubt anything's going to come of it.
Well, then why do you think it is that the Clintons were so reluctant to go and give information to the committee?
I think they're embarrassed. I think they're really embarrassed.
But I mean,
Everybody, you know, I
do they
think
not believe
it's like they're so embarrassed by it, they don't want to answer
Are they not
questions.
embarrassed right now, being held in contempt of court by the U.S. Congress?
You'd think, but I think they're embarrassed. I think that, and you know, their egos are, you know, they're embarrassed by it. They don't want to be dragged in the mud.
Wow.
So
I didn't think it was possible to embarrass the Clintons, Will.
Oh, you know, everybody has a limit, even the Clintons. And so that's my suspicion. Now, I mean, maybe there is something there, and you know, maybe like, and maybe Bill thinks like there's just embarrassing conduct, but he thinks like, oh well, it's legal but embarrassing, you know, or whatever that he engaged in with Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like the reason I say that, like, why I think that there's not other criminal conduct is because I think that basically what Epstein probably did is he did some of the stuff that was legal but just sort of morally abhorrent. He did that with other people, and the illegal stuff he kept to himself and Galan, right? So if you have this world where it's like the actual, you know, the like bringing in, you know, like, I don't know, prostitutes or like high level escorts or stuff like that was done with other people, but then, or, you know, maybe just younger 20s women that he would bring in, but then the teenagers and the pedophilia was kept in, you know, in his internally. That's my guess as to what actually is happening here. And again, it's the underlying reason, the hard thing to explain away is we've had 15 years of investigations done civilly by very talented lawyers. There's been no lack of resources to go after it. If there was more criminal conduct, if there was stuff that people could be sued for, that would have been revealed at some point.
Yeah, and you may be, and Will, you may be 100% right. There may be nothing there, but the fact that the DOJ or, you know, prosecutors are not prosecuting the case is not in and of itself evidence that there's nothing there.
I agree.
We've seen flagrant
violations
of law in this country where people have walked away, and Americans, millions of them, are wondering why people are not being arrested and indicted. So the mere fact that DOJ is not moving on things, to me, does not indicate a lack of evidence.
I agree with that, and that's not my.
Right.
Understand that's not my claim, right? My claim is not about DOJ's investigation. My claim is about the civil investigations, right? Like the understand that it's the fact that there was a huge amount of money to be made by the supposed victims and their lawyers if they were able to uncover third parties that were civilly liable, which is not a hard bar to get over. And the fact that the only people that got sued, I mean, there was one lawsuit against Alan Dershowitz, and then eventually that woman had to fully retract what she said because basically, like, Dershowitz won a defamation claim against her. And outside of that, there just weren't any allegations against
that.
Now,
that's a great point, Will. That's a great point you make. You're saying that there was no civil litigation, certainly no successful civil litigation against anybody outside of Maxwell and Epstein themselves.
Correct. Okay. And that litigation, it's not like, you know, if you're saying like why maybe they screwed up or something, it's like, well, these are like the best plaintiffs lawyers in the world who are handling these cases. And there was a huge amount of money they extracted out of the Epstein estate, right? They made a lot of money for their clients. There would have been plenty more money to make if they had prominent, high-level, wealthy third parties that they had discovered evidence of in the course of enormous amounts of document discovery and depositions that they would have done in the 2010s over this issue.
Yeah.
And nothing came of it, right? So if I'm not saying it's impossible. Like maybe the FBI has some evidence or something that was just not available to the civil litigants. But my guess is the answer to that question is, you know, if you're a betting man, like, if the evidence would have come out, right? The evidence there would have been so much money to make out of this evidence coming out that it's not coming out is a big tell.
Do you think that there's any tie-in? Like, do you think that there could have been any NDAs in play? But it sounds like there was civil litigation that happened regardless, and so maybe some of that would have borne some fruit.
Well, I mean, you'd think that wouldn't be the case because, like, you're talking about criminal conduct. The amount of money you would have had to give you'd have had to sign a settlement pre-litigation with a third party. The settlement would be one of the most extraordinary settlements imaginable. It'd be a huge amount of money. It would ring bells, right? Like
Okay.
I have a strong doubt that, especially again, because these people were represented by competent counsel, the idea that if crimes were committed against them, they would have just signed away an NDA for a trivial amount of money that wouldn't have made a stink, raised any alarms, doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good point. Let's talk about Judge Boasberg. Will,
yes.
the guy about whom Justice Roberts basically said, I know that Article 3 is pushing for him to be impeached.
Yes.
Justice Roberts, a while back, indicated that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision, and that the normal appellate process exists for that purpose. Is that all Judge Boasberg was doing, in your view, Will? Was
No.
issuing a difference of a judicial opinion that the Trump administration disagreed with?
I mean, Judge Boasberg's done a lot of things that are kind of crazy, but in this case, he was signing off on non-disclosure orders that made findings that he had no basis to make. So he signed off on a non-disclosure order on a subpoena. The only way he could legally do that was by finding that the targets of the subpoena, namely 6 Republican U.S. senators, were probably going to destroy evidence or tamper with it if the subpoena was revealed to them. I mean, that's an insult. And he later disclosed that he had just signed off on them without actually figuring out who these people were, which itself is an even bigger problem, which means he's signing off on non-disclosure orders, which he has a lawful obligation to ensure meet the standards of the law, because otherwise the target of the subpoena needs to be informed. And he was just doing it he was just rubber stamping them. That's not normal litigation. That's also not an appealable order, right? Like the harm of the non-disclosure order happens at the time of the non-disclosure order. So if he's frivolously he's just rubber stamping them, that's impeachable conduct. It's not, the appellate process doesn't have any remedy for that. So that's just wrong.
He was facilitating, Will. So in your view, Boasberg was facilitating DOJ's illegal spying on these 6 U.S. senators.
Correct. They had the Senate had passed legislation that meant that any type of subpoena of records for a senator needed to be flagged to the senators, like there were unique restrictions on these sort of non-disclosure orders, and none of those laws were followed. Jack Smith broke the law. Judge Boasberg broke the law, and Judge Boasberg did so in a really frivolous and ridiculous way. I think his conduct is more inexplicable than Smith. I mean, Smith has the right to, in some sense, he has the right to issue a subpoena, but he had an obligation to disclose it. But it's Judge Boasberg who, as a judge, rubber stamped an order making findings about that he had no basis to make. I think it's honestly his conduct is worse.
Yes. So he was assuming essentially that falsely that these U.S. senators, if they knew about the subpoenas, would destroy evidence or try to hide.
Assuming that they'd and many of these people are members of the bar too, so they have professional ethical obligations not to do stuff like that. Like you can't destroy evidence if you're a lawyer. You'll get disbarred under any circumstances. So that's they're insulting. They're insulting them. They'd say like, I know that you will betray your oaths of office and your professional ethical obligations.
Yeah. What an insult! What an absolute
disclose
insult!
A subpoena. Yeah. It's a horrifying insult to make of senators, of United States senators. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
What about
Jim Jordan?
Go ahead,
sorry,
Danielle. I'm sorry.
Has Jim Jordan done anything about it? Is it his role to start the impeachment?
There are articles of impeachment have been filed against Boasberg. I think by Brandon Gill.
Brandon Gill.
And Brandon Gill from Texas, who's a great representative, really doing a good job. And so those are, that's in the works. I just actually testified at a Senate judiciary hearing a couple weeks ago on this. Literally, actually, I think almost 2 weeks ago exactly. 2 weeks ago yesterday.
Yeah.
So had a whole discussion about this. They're trying to kind of build a record and see what Democrats can say about this. And I think they're going to go forward this impeachment, as well as the impeachment of Judge Boardman. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that too, but the Boardman impeachment is the one where she was the person who gave an 8-year sentence to the lunatic trans person who tried to assassinate Justice Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
We do want to talk about that, but I want to ask you this though: on Boasberg, do the articles of impeachment include and are there grounds to include his action with regard to Trump's effort to deport the criminals?
Yes. That's there too. I mean, his conduct with regard to the Alien Enemies Act case was also, in my view, impeachable, although that was like stuff you could appeal. But it was still, his conduct there was lawless. And it actually continues to be lawless. He's still trying to hold DHS officials in contempt for failing to comply with his unlawful orders.
Yeah. What are the other grounds for impeachment for him?
Those are the two big ones. I think.
Those are the two main ones?
There might be another one off, but those are the two big ones. Yeah.
Okay. And what about Boardman?
Boardman just simply decided that attempting to assassinate a Supreme Court justice is worthy of an 8-year sentence instead of the 30 years that was required, or not required, but urged by the guidelines. That's a crazy sentence. It impugns the integrity of the judiciary and endangers the judiciary, because this is a person who tried to kill Justice Kavanaugh to change the composition of the Supreme Court so that it would rule the way he thought it should rule on things like abortion. Political assassination is no joke. If you start weakening the penalty for that, we'll end up in civil war. Don't do that. That's a crazy thing to do. One of the interesting things about my testimony was that, a lot of the Democratic senators had defenses of Judge Boasberg, but none of them could defend Judge Boardman's sentence. None of them, not one, would say like, this is okay, maybe not too bad. No, they were all like, well, it'll be appealed. That's like the best defense they could come up for it. But that's not good enough. I mean, you've sent the signal with just the imposition of the sentence in the first place that there are judges that don't take seriously the safety and security of other judges, of justices of the Supreme Court. That's a crazy thing to do. And her reasoning is just offensive. I mean, basically, this judge's reasoning was that because this was a trans person, the judicial incarceration would be more punitive than it would be for normal people, and therefore a smaller sentence was justified to punish the conduct.
Ridiculous.
Come
Absolutely
on.
ridiculous. Does Congress have the power, Will, to subpoena these judges in connection with these?
No. There's no subpoena you could issue, because you don't have a right to the internal deliberations of the documents, and there's also a separation of powers problem with subpoenaing them to testify before you. So I think like judges would just resist it, and judges would be the one who's enforced the subpoena at the end of the day. So, right, like you can't do, basically the remedy is impeachment. The remedy is, it's not that you need to bring the judges to testify, you impeach them and then you put them on trial. And if they want to testify in their own defense at trial, that's their call. But
right. So if it gets over to the Senate, Will, if it passes a simple majority in the House and gets over to the Senate, they very well could voluntarily show up.
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting stuff.
You had mentioned previously when you came on, Will, I believe that you would also recommend that they just pull the funding, that the Trump administration or Congress pull the funding for these seats. Would you remind us, what's the mechanism for that? Is it rescissions through
I don't know. I mean, you can try
Treasury?
you can do some things to try and take away their budget. Like you can reduce the budget for judges more generally. You could have restructuring of jurisdiction of the courts, right? You could say that the DC District Court, instead of getting federal cases, now has to deal with like street crime in DC, and then take those cases and give them to judges elsewhere. You could abolish the DDC, right? There's nothing about the Constitution that requires any specific appellate or inferior court to continue to exist. The only thing that's specified in the Constitution is the Supreme Court. Congress has the right to create and abolish judgeships and courts. So there are things you could do. I mean, obviously, I don't think we have the votes for any of that, even though they don't need the 2/3 for impeachment. I don't think we have the simple majorities we would need, honestly. Like, we just would have some Senate defectors, and that we don't have enough to do that. But theoretically, like in a world where we actually win some more seats and have better people we aren't at the mercy of Republican squishes, then we could do things like that.
But your Article 3, though, Will, is still recommending that Congress move forward, even if it's uncertain, or even if you know that you don't have the votes as a matter of principle, correct?
Right. I mean, these people, the list of judges who have been impeached, even if they haven't been convicted, is not a long one. Something like 12 to 14. I don't remember the exact number, but it's not a long
15,
one in the entire history.
15 have been impeached, 9 were convicted.
There you go. Okay, so you have a better handle on that number than I do. But yes, we want these people. These people should have their names etched in the history of judges whose conduct was so appalling that they were impeached for it.
Yeah.
What are the
Well, let's
chances that the DC bar would strip them of their?
Zero. I mean, DC bar's liberal. Zero.
Yeah, not going to happen. But the last thing I want to talk to you about today, Will, is Tina Peters. I know that you're urging a commutation of her sentence. I think Governor Polis was leaning or suggesting that the sentence was too harsh, and it looks like he was softening on the issue. And then suddenly, out of the clear blue, Tina Peters is arrested in jail for a new felony assault charge, which
Oh, I
appears
missed that. Interesting. Okay.
which appears to be entirely bogus. Just before she may have been granted a commutation of her sentence, which of course brings this right back to the foot of the corrupt DA's office there. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Tina Peters and her being released from prison, and can it happen?
I mean, it can. I think there's a lot of pressure that can be brought to bear on Jared Polis, and I think that sentence was crazy. That sentence was like wildly disproportionate. So I think she needs to, that should have been 6 months to a year, something like that, and which was like 10. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not super familiar with like what pressure to be brought to bear on Mr. Polis. Mike probably has a better idea. Mike lives in Colorado part-time, so when he's there, he has a better handle on what can be done with vis-a-vis Colorado politics. I don't really know, and so I'd just be talking out of my where when it came to that.
Well,
I try not to do that. I really do.
I know you don't do that.
It's
very
so
often,
tempting to
Will.
do that sometimes because you just want to be like, yeah, I know about everything. I know everything.
Right.
Don't worry. But like, I actually
Right.
don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Well, it lends a lot of credibility to the things you do know, Will. So thank you for that. Remind people how to make their voices heard in Washington via the Article 3
Yes.
project, and let us know what are your top priorities right now.
So a3paction.com is where we have a portal. And this is a very useful thing for your listeners and your viewers. So within 30 seconds, you can click on this thing and fill in some information, and you will send an email directly to your representative. You don't have to figure out who that is. You'll send an email to your representative or your senator, and they will get an email on the topic that's pre-populated with the message you're trying to send. If you agree with the message of any of the campaigns. The primary one we're pushing right now, we're trying to push House members to vote to impeach Boasberg and Boardman. That's the primary one we're pushing. So this is a very good thing to do. Yeah, you'll have to give us your email address. Like that's the only, I think you have to put in your physical address because we need to know where you are in order to know whose representative you are a constituent of. But the speed at which you can do this, like if you actually use this portal, like the first time I used it, I was really kind of blown away by how simple it was. Like you'll be done in less than 60 seconds and you will send a message. And the impact of this is dramatic because, the broader social media conversation representatives pay attention to, but you can bet that your representatives pay serious attention to the actual direct contacts they get from their own constituents, the people who vote for them. So this has a real impact on their conduct.
Yeah. How close are they right now?
I don't know the answer to that question. I'm not really counting. But I would suspect that this is actually going to happen. I think it really is. I think that although there might be a few representatives who are tricky, and so maybe it'll have to wait a little bit until we just need more people because we're dealing with this like tiny 1 to 2 seat majority, right? We had just had that representative sadly pass away in California. Yeah. And Thomas Massey's not reliable for anything. So, it's a very challenging moment for Mike Johnson. I give him a lot of grace. Like his job is extraordinarily hard, and he just doesn't have the power that he would like, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, Will, God bless you, sir. Thank you for joining us today, and we will be following all your work.
Thank you so much. Happy to be with you guys.
It's great to see you again. Take care, Will.
All right, you too.
I'm so thankful, Chris, that we have Article 3 project fighting every single day in Washington. I just think of them as like boxers in the ring. Mike Davis, for sure, has not backed down from a single fight. And I think whenever people start throwing punches or saying dumb stuff, he just punches harder. And I think that's the true of the people he's brought on to represent his team.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's great to have warriors like that fighting for things that truly matter, truly important, and particularly with regard to this issue with Don Lemon, and the invasion of this church. I think that is
Yeah.
one of the top 2 or 3 most important issues of the day because of the precedent that sets. And I'm just very thankful that at least in this situation, the DOJ appears to be doing its job very vigorously.
Yeah. And one thing we were talking about before the show, and I think Will is a bit more diplomatic than us on this piece, that the people like Don Lemon and that civil rights attorney who organized this quote unquote protest that marched into the church, and the Clintons and um our view is they just seem to operate with impunity because they have never really seen anyone on their side face any consequences for criminal behavior. And so I love to see the dial changing on that.
Yeah. The result of a lot of this, Danielle, you're exactly right, is that many of these people on the left are habituated to believe that they can act illegally and in the most grotesque ways with impunity and not have to worry about being prosecuted for anything. And it goes to the very top levels of our government. So if you're observing all of these questionable, lawless activities going on, and you don't see anybody on your side ever getting in trouble for anything, certainly that is an invitation to lawlessness and ultimately to anarchy. Well, hopefully, these people who invaded this church, including Don Lemon, are understanding that there is a new sheriff in town. And I'm thankful for that in this case. I wish that the sheriff would expand out and begin to arrest and indict former Biden officials at the top levels of his government for for really equally egregious acts in a different sphere, obviously, but extraordinarily important that we see them move forward on those indictments as well.
Yeah, and look, people want to see Hillary and Bill in jail for a heck of a lot more than ignoring a congressional subpoena. But I would be happy, we've learned through Tina Peters' arrest while she's in jail that is a real possibility. So maybe while they sit in jail, they can also get rearrested for the far more serious crimes that I believe they've committed.
Yeah, and maybe so. Absolutely right. And on the Tina issue, Will was not too familiar with that issue, but every day that passes, Danielle, where Tina Peters sits in a jail is a day of another miscarriage of justice for her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she has to be released. There's no doubt in my mind that this new charge for which she was arrested in prison is the direct result of their fear that the governor was softening on this issue and was on the verge of commuting her sentence. And now, arguably, he can't do so because there's a new pending felony against her. And I think that there is no action that these corrupt people will not take, nothing they will not do to ensure that she dies in prison. And I know that you don't want to declare that. And I still believe that she will be released and that God will ensure that that occurs. But the level of corruption that we're dealing with in Colorado with respect to Tina Peters is absolutely appalling to me.
Yeah. Yeah. It is absolutely appalling. And we will continue to pray for Tina. Would encourage people to tag her on social media and send encouragement her way. I know that you can write letters to her. So if people are interested in doing that, I'm sure we can share the address for sending. Y'all just get in touch with us if you want. I'll find out if it's okay to share that address. And if it is, we'll put it in the show notes or something, or share it next show.
Absolutely. And of course, prayer, as you said, Danielle, is extraordinarily important.
Yeah.
Prayer and action. But at the bottom of it is prayer, because I truly believe that God can do anything that he chooses to do. And I think that this is a situation that absolutely begs for justice.
Yeah, it really does. A couple of announcements before we go, Chris. Next week, we will be back in action on Tuesday with a Hidden Gem Spotlight. It'll give us a nice, calm break from politics for 1 sweet hour next week. So you won't want to miss that on Tuesday. And then on For the Love of Freedom, this coming Wednesday, Sean Briscom will be back with me to talk about how to best position yourself financially amidst all the financial uncertainty that's going on. We're going to be talking about the fraud that's being uncovered across the U.S. And how nobody wants to pay taxes now, and what is going on with the Federal Reserve. And I believe Jerome Powell's being investigated for some pretty serious stuff with regard to his mismanagement of funds for that rebuild of the Federal Reserve building. And then Thursday, our dear friend, Professor Dave Clements, is scheduled to join us to talk current events. And I imagine we will focus a good deal of that time on Tina Peters as well. I know that he is as outraged as us about what's going on, especially the developments of the last, 1 to 2 weeks, 1 week, I think. And so I'm looking forward to that. And then just a reminder and a shameless plug for everyone to please join as a subscriber of the Warrior Circle. You can do that at join.freedomstate.us. Let me see if I have that right here. Yeah, here we go. Join us, and you will get exclusive Q&As with guests and ourselves on shows twice a month. And we're just excited to be doing that. We'll be more excited when we have our tech stack fixed.
We're going to have
namely me.
We're going to have so much fun, Danielle, with the Warrior Circle. That is one of the most exciting things to be doing that, to have a group of people come together and coalesce, talk about issues that are critically important, and build one another up for this battle. And we need it. It's going to be fun, nurturing, and we need it. We got to have it.
Well, thank you, Chris. And are you, I'm going to put up the Tigerland Properties graphic if you want to go ahead and give them a nice plug.
Absolutely.
Tigerland. Here we go.
The Carla DeYoung with Tigerland Properties. These are licensed professional realtors in Louisiana, commercial, residential, investments, whatever you choose to do. These people, whether you're buying, whether you're selling, whether you want to invest, these people are the best in the business. They really are. Tigerland Properties, mainly they work in the Boot area of Louisiana, down in South Louisiana, but truly you could not be in better hands if you're buying or selling commercial, residential, or investing than Tigerland Properties. I encourage you to call them 225-320-3004. You want to make sure you're in good hands with commercial, residential, real estate, or investment, and they are the best.
Yeah, we're super excited to have them on as new sponsors and supporters of the show. That is just such an encouragement to us. And Chris, now why don't we talk about Red Zeppelin Pizza?
Danielle, I'm going to Red Zeppelin today. I'm going up there and I'm going to get that medium veggie with jalapenos. It is literally the best pizza I've ever eaten. And I've eaten at a lot of pizza places. And Red Zeppelin, the atmosphere, the ambiance, the food, the service is just extraordinary. And the music. You will love the music. So go into Red Zeppelin if you're visiting Baton Rouge. Certainly if you live in Baton Rouge, right up there on Perkins, 225-302-7153. If you want a takeout order, they also have a drive-through. But I love Red Zeppelin, and I'm just so glad that we have it a couple of miles from my house. It's just extraordinary pizza, extraordinary service.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. Well, God bless you, sir. I hope you have a wonderful weekend and get some rest, and I will be talking to you soon. I'll see you back here on Tuesday morning.
God bless you, Danielle.
God bless you. Thanks for joining us today on the State of Freedom. Be sure and check out the show notes for this episode. You can always go there and find the calls to action and resources mentioned in the show, and you can find out more information about our advertisers there as well. If you want to learn more about us or support our work, visit freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org. We'll see you next time. God bless.